Welcome back to Pluck That. I'm Nick Seraldo, and I'm joined by Mike Boyd and Jonathan Bass. We have a great episode lined up for you, but first we're going to get into some news. I think I'll start this week, and I have some news that's not exactly related to the guitar, but it kind of is. I fell. So it wasn't a big fall, but it's actually kind of a humorous thing. I just purchased a bike, and I was walking the bike around my car, and I tripped over the bike, and I fell in the middle of this parking lot where I bought the bike. I could have badly injured myself, and as a musician, that's not what you want to do. I mean, you don't want to do it anyway. You know, most humans want to, stay well, but I came very close to injuring my right hand the day of a gig. And so that was a very dramatic morning for me. Fortunately, I was fine. The next day, my right pinky was so swollen that, it kind of affected me a little bit when I was playing fingerstyle, but just wanted to share that quick story and warn everyone, especially musicians, to be very careful with yourself. That's all I got.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's safety third, as they say, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
People say that.
weird the stupid things that happen. Like I have a cat that loves to take me out on the regs, and sometimes it may be just a quick trip or something like that, but there have been times when it's been on the stairwell, and the fact that I haven't been injured worse is kind of amazing. But it's those type of things when you're just not mindful. Being a cyclist myself, the interaction with dogs running out or traffic, and I had a bad accident 7 or 8 years ago where I fractured my wrist, and when it first happened, a dog took me out going down a hill about 35 miles per hour, and the way I hit, I lost feeling from about my elbow down, and I just thought something seriously had happened that might jeopardize my future as a musician. And it's scary. And even now, the older I've gotten, just the little bumps and bangs I get here and there, like when I was doing yard work, wake up the next day with trigger finger and things like that. It's we all need to be mindful. Absolutely.
Someone once asked me, "Oh, Nick, you give all these concerts. You must have insured your hands for $1 million." And I'm like, "No, I didn't insure my hands for $1 million. First of all, I'm a guitarist. I can't afford that." And it's unusual to do that. However, yeah,
We're basically neurosurgeons.
I mean,
Come on, you should have your hands insured. You know what I mean?
yeah. Nonetheless, yeah, it is something that I think many musicians sometimes just take for granted. You're just going through the daily routine, and one false move, and you could really affect your playing ability, and so it could be a very major thing. I'm not going to go into all the horror stories that I've heard of other people, and so I consider myself very grateful, but that sucked. So anyway,
Glad you're all right.
thanks. Boyd, what about you?
Well, I have two bits of news that I'm very excited about. I'm going to touch back on an earlier podcast where I mentioned getting a custom Kiesel that I very much enjoy. But I got, some of their stock pickups, and not that they're bad at all. In fact, Jonathan loved it when he played it, and so much so he asked me what I was going to do when I changed pickups. I said, well, I don't know. He said, I'll take them, and they're Jonathan's now as soon as I can get them to him. But I dropped a set of Lawler Standard Imperials in it today, and Lord of mercy, the difference that made. And on top of that, me being the one to do it, soldering them in. It's not a terribly difficult wiring scheme, but it was one that I was not familiar with, being a two pickup guitar and a five-way selector that allowed you to have in the outer positions the humbuckers, positions 2 and 4, coil splitting for single coil sound, and the middle position was those two single coils from both the neck and bridge pickup, and just figuring out how to work that out. And I got it right the first time. I did my research to make sure I knew what the wires were and the color codes, and I'm very pleased with the way that it turned out.
I'll say that Mike is a soldering sorcerer. He's very good with the.
Yeah. His soldering skills have increased exponentially since I've known him, for sure.
Exponentially, because a year and a half ago I didn't know how to do it. So.
Well, yeah, okay. I'll still stand by what I said.
Well, Jonathan,
You're
I
better than me.
appreciate you. Yeah,
You're
all
better
those
than me.
years
I've been
you
doing it for a good, I don't know, 7 or 8 years. So
and I relied on you several times to put pickups in a couple of guitars, so I thank you for that.
Talking about a skill, I mean, that's like we were talking about repairs and maintenance and stuff you can do at home. That is something that not everyone can do at home, nor probably should do at home. But the fact that you can and few other people can, that's really great. It's cool.
It's been super helpful. It's allowed me to do a lot of things that I might either not have done or at the very least put on the back burner.
we've touched on this before. It's like you hesitate to order just a pickup because you're like, well, if I order the pickup, then I got to take it to the shop and I got to have it in. It's like there's a few things that you can teach yourself to do, and it's not that big of a deal. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. Now, Boyd, you have a little something else to show us, don't you? A little show and tell. Do we have a little show and tell
Yeah, a
day?
little something, something, which will hopefully help lead into our guest we have today. Gentlemen, behold, new
Nice.
guitar.
This is a Grez guitar, and made by Barry Grzebik. Yep, there it is. His shirt.
For those who can see, he sent me a very lovely T-shirt as well.
So later in this episode, we will have the distinct pleasure of speaking with Barry Grzebik, the man behind Grez Guitars, and we'll hope to have a fantastic conversation with him about him, his guitars, his design, his philosophies, and more. So that's ahead. But Bass, I think you have a little bit of news as well, don't you?
Yeah, I got a couple of news events. Well, I mean, one, since we're talking about guitars, my recent visit to see the Michael Boydmaster Boyd, he let me borrow his Esquire, all right, which is kind of it's cool. It's stealth, all right. So underneath here, there's a pickup, all right. So single ply pickup. And I don't know who did this originally. I know that John English, the Fender custom shop guy guru, made one. I don't know who originated it. Maybe Clarence White did it at some point. I cannot remember, honestly. But anyway, this is a great sounding parts caster, stealth, and nice 5-way switch with a bunch of capacitor options. Jerry Donahue bridge pickup, and it's lovely to play. So
One of my favorite parts of that guitar is that boat neck, Warmoth neck.
yeah,
Feels good.
yeah, I like it. It's the V. It's taken some getting used to. I always forget that it's on here. I like the old broadcaster and no-caster necks too. You know, just the really big C, like feels like a baseball bat. You know.
So everyone, we're talking about how the backs of electric guitars can be shaved in a different ways to the player's preferences. You can have just a more pronounced curve. You can have a pointed kind of a neck and more. And so that's what Bass was referring to with V and C and other shapes like that. So
Yeah, the neck profile, as they
there you
say.
go.
And then a little random bit of news. I was contacted this week, or maybe the end of last week, it doesn't matter, via Bandcamp for the first time ever. somebody heard my music and reached out for a not necessarily a collaboration, but to coordinate a tour, or if they were coming through my town, if I was coming through their town, we could get, since we were playing similar music, our bands played similar music, then we could get together and coordinate our efforts, And I thought that was cool. I don't really get too much, I don't know, interaction on Bandcamp in general. If I do, it's, the random person buying a track or, thumbs up or something like that. But this was the first time that they, heard it and then reached out, with a specific thing in mind. And, I like Bandcamp and I like other platforms that a lot of people don't. Well, people outside of our profession, I suppose, don't utilize, right? And I wish that would. I know we're going to probably do another episode later about the use or eventually lack thereof social media, for better or worse. I know I have thoughts on it. I know I would prefer not to use it, but it's sort of like an accepted tool, right? That we as a community of musicians have all decided that we must have, right? And so that'll be a good episode. But anyway, Bandcamp, is more than just a publishing tool. So hopefully it'll grow, you know.
Very cool. Very cool, Bass. Well, gentlemen, I have a surprise for you. I have no rant this evening. I have something new that I would
come
like.
on, part 4.
No, that'll be for another night. I have something special for you planned this evening. Something that I'm going to be calling Game Show. Yes, Game Show.
I'm going to be the first to say I don't like the sound of this.
No, you're gonna love this. You're both gonna love this. It's a competition between the two of you. Okay, so there will be a winner and a loser, or there may be a tie. You'll get nothing but glory if you win. But since we're all friends and we talk with each other often, I'm sure you'll get such glory that you'll be able to benefit from it for weeks or months or maybe even years to come. So, and hopefully this is the first of many game shows that we're going to be able to have and our listeners will enjoy listening to. So you may remember early on in our podcast, we were joking about how guitar effects pedals have names that are so clever, so, creative, that they often sound like the creative names of beer. In particular, IPAs, India Pale Ale. So I have decided to come up with a game show this evening where you will need to be able to guess whether what I tell you is either a guitar effects pedal or an IPA. So we're going to be playing a game a game that I'm going to be calling Guitar Pedal or IPA.
Guitar pedal. I love it already. I take everything being ever said back.
So here we go. You will have 3 rounds: easy, intermediate, and expert. So the first round, you're going to have some guesses that are going to be pretty obvious. In the second round, intermediate, I might be throwing you some curveballs. You might be wondering, what's he trying to do with me? And in the expert round...
Wait, is this a buzzer round or do we just answer? We each get a chance to answer. And
you each get a chance to answer. No buzzer.
Okay. All right.
And then the third round is going to be expert, where it's just like really hard stuff. Just, obscure names. Yeah. Okay. I'll give you one hint. In each of the rounds, there will be 2 IPAs and 2 pedals. And there are 4 guesses in each round, okay?
Okay.
So we'll start, and I think you'll get it after a while. And I'll be keeping
track. I think we got it.
You're smart.
Yeah, we're fairly smart.
Okay.
All right, well, are you going to edit in like prices right? Like, sound,
This is a homegrown podcast. I'm going to do the best I can.
okay. All
You
right.
may have opened up a can of worms because Bass and I are pretty competitive with our morning games as
Well,
well too. So,
this
Oh man, we're 80 before our time. You know what I
okay.
mean? Like we're both up
yeah,
at
Okay.
crack of dawn before we get our day started competing with puzzles and stuff.
Well, then this will be one more puzzle game you'll be able
We're
to
five
compete
hours
with.
away.
Yeah. All right, here's the easy round.
All right.
All right, so you just tell me if it's an IPA or a pedal, okay? Unsessionable.
IPA.
IPA,
Next one, Chick-fil-A.
Pedal.
I would say pedal.
Next one, Juicy Bits.
That sounds like
IPA.
an IPA.
Okay, last one, Fender Blender.
Be a pedal.
Gonna say pedal. Yeah.
Okay. All four correct. Like I said, that's the easy round. Okay. So, Unsessionable is an IPA by Revolution Brewing. Chick-fil-A, which I thought was an awesome name, was made by Westminster Effects. Juicy Bits is an IPA from Weldworks Brewing, and Fender made the Fender Blender. All right. Are you ready for the next round?
Yep.
Lay it on me.
Okay. Extended play.
Pedal.
Yeah, that seems pedalish. I'd say pedal.
Okay. Overdrive.
IPA.
IPA.
Okay. Bearded Lady.
IPA.
IPA.
And beer.
Pedal.
I'm gonna go with IPA because I've wanted to name a beer for a long time.
Okay. That's funny. Okay. Here are the answers. Extended Play is an IPA by Lakefront Brewery. Overdrive is an IPA by Polyrhythm Brewery. Bearded Lady is a pedal by Ashdown Engineering, Dr. Green's Bearded Lady. And beer is a pedal by Way Huge Electronics. Y'all, you
Way
guys,
huge, really.
you did
Wow.
I don't
really,
know that one.
you did really poorly in that round, both of
But
you.
Boyd won, right?
Bass got one out of that one. Boyd, you got two.
Really?
So
Which one did I get?
you got, I forget which one, but you got one of them. Maybe Overdrive. I think you both said IPA for Overdrive. I'll have to go back
I was
through
gonna
the
say we both. Yeah. Okay.
That means that Boyd is ahead by one.
Yeah. Well,
Not for
that's
long.
that's.
And now we're walking. Now we're going right into expert round. Are y'all ready?
Why not?
Tararira.
IPA.
IPA. No.
Okay. Dirt Wolf.
Pedal.
Pedal.
Digital Bath.
Pedal.
Pedal.
Dream Reaper.
IPA.
That sounds like a pedal, but
It could go either way for sure, but I'm gonna go IPA.
Boyd, final answer?
let me go pedal.
Okay. Here are the answers for that round. Tara, remember, I worked on this. Like, I wanted to find pedals or IPAs that were like, they made no reference to anything, or it was just like, that's subtly, like it kind of hints at one thing or another. Anyway, Tararira, good luck with that one. But that's a pedal made by Banana Effects. Dirt Wolf, I was really hoping to throw you off with the dirt in it. For our listeners, distortion is often called dirt, but that's an IPA made by Victory Brewing.
Okay, I got that wrong.
Victory Brewing. Digital Bath is an IPA by Belching Beaver Brewing.
Oh wow, I want one of their
And
T-shirts.
Dream Reaper is a pedal by Adventure Audio. And that's the only one that one of you got right. And that person was Michael Boyd. And so, Dr. Boyd, you are this week's winner.
I'd like to thank the Academy.
Whatever.
Bass, better luck next time, son. Isn't that fun?
That was quite the surprise, Nick.
That's great. Good job, man.
Wow.
Oh man.
Well, I
All
think
right.
that is enough hijinks and fun and news. I think it's time to get to the main event, our interview with Barry Grzebik. Mike, you want to set us up a little bit?
Uh, I reached out to Barry back in the summer when, if any of our listeners have listened to earlier podcasts, I had mentioned I was in this process of getting rid of a few guitars to make way for some new guitars, and this is one of the top ones on the list, a Grez guitar. And so I went back and forth with Barry for a couple of weeks to really come up with what would be an ideal instrument. And in amongst our conversing, I had mentioned to him, hey, we've started this podcast. Maybe you would be interested in chatting with us. And he said, sure. And we were thrilled to get that response. But it's weird how it worked out that the week we are interviewing him, I also received my Grez guitar, which
It's
is
awesome.
amazing.
It's an awesome guitar.
But yeah, Barry has been fantastic through the process. I've learned a lot from him. I have no doubt we're going to learn a lot from talking with him. He is so knowledgeable, but also so down to earth. Just a really incredible person. I hope our listeners will be as inspired by what he has to say as I have been with the experience I've had with Barry.
Let's get into it.
Well, we are thrilled this week to have Barry Grzebik of Grez Guitars with us. Barry, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, appreciate the invite. Good to see you guys.
Hey, Barry.
I first came across Barry's work on another podcast that he sponsors, and I had heard of Grez Guitars in passing, but did a deeper dive. And Barry, I was blown away by what I saw, not only on your website, but videos and reviews. And so blown away, of course, I had to pull the trigger and get one of your guitars, which was a really, really great experience working with you to, customize this instrument for me and using your expertise to make sure it was the right instrument for my needs and what I needed. But before we do too much of a dive into the minutia, I wonder if you might take a moment just to introduce yourselves to our audience. We have a very diverse audience, and there may be a few people who have not heard of Grez Guitars.
Sure.
And just thought you might want to give us a little bit about your background and what you do.
Yeah, thank you. I've been building guitars for 15, maybe 16 years now. So I didn't start out as a guitar builder. I'm, old enough to have done something before that, I guess. I came to guitar building midlife, I suppose, having been a professional acoustician and product designer in the audio business. So I used to design loudspeakers for a living, among other things. And then eventually it turned into guitars. I started out building acoustic guitars, and then it sort of transitioned into semi-hollow guitars, seemed to be a spot that I really wanted to focus. And I build with a lot of redwood, reclaimed redwood. I live and work here in Northern California, where 100 years ago, 150 years ago, everything was built from redwood. It was just the local lumber. So now, all these years later, bridges and tunnels and structures, when they come down, if you know the right people, you can find some of this old reclaimed wood and build instruments from it. So I do a lot of reclaimed redwood building, lots of semi-hollow instruments, but also hollow, a few solid bodies. I'm happy to make solid bodies, but I don't push that super hard. There's a lot of competition there. I feel like creating a unique semi-hollow or hollow instrument, there's more ways to do something interesting and unique. Where with a solid body guitar, not to downplay the artistry and craftsmanship and design, but there is you have less variables to play with. So I enjoy semi-hollow and hollow instruments, I think, would be the way to put it.
Well, I'm really enjoying what you've put together for me. It's remarkable in so many ways, and your attention to detail is just beyond anything, I really see a lot. So there's probably a lot of questions we all want to dig into a little bit here regarding your builds and your techniques. You have a lot of innovative designs. One of the things we wondered about is your, personal, builds. What has led you to this point, the shapes, and what makes yours different now.
Sure. I mean, aesthetically, I think what I build is obviously derivative of a few vintage pieces, but not a copy of anything. So you could probably find a little Dan Electro in there, a little Hofner Club in there, a little, a bunch of things are sort of mixed together to make it, but it's sort of hard to hide your influences maybe in that regard. But I 100% don't want to and didn't set out to build copies of things, right? So none of them look like Tellys or Les Pauls or any of that sort of thing, right? As a product designer, that's cheating to me, right? I just don't, for my personal just design philosophy, I guess, right? If I haven't designed it, it just doesn't get me excited. So the shapes are my designs. And I do like traditional looking instruments. That's just my taste. But I don't necessarily feel like they have to be built and function traditionally, which is where sort of my engineering background comes into play. So I really look at these as platforms to do interesting things. So how shall I put it? I want to make guitars that are lighter than you think they're going to be and sound bigger than they look. That's kind of the basic goal with everything I make. And any instrument I hand somebody, hopefully they're like, wow, this is light. And this sounds like my 16-inch arch top and it's only 14 inches or something like that. And a lot of the ways I can get there is just through careful design and material selection and maybe slightly different approaches that I'm free to do because I'm in a sense, a new brand, right? Things that maybe Gibson can't do, or Gretsch, or even Benedetto, brands that have this history of doing a certain thing. Their customers won't tolerate them being too innovative. And again, I don't want to be innovative aesthetically, but I do want to be innovative in the how it works.
Well, I thought it was interesting you mentioned, weight is, a very big concern of yours, and for many of us who have played heavy instruments, it is too, and we want, that weight, relief and functionality. The one you sent me might be a smidge over 6.5 pounds. Yeah. I think I saw on your Instagram, you just sent out one of your solid bodies. I think it was a Mendocino, maybe a Mendocino Junior. That was 5.7 pounds or something like that.
Yes, that might have been a base 6. I'm not sure. Mendocino base 6. But so yeah, so having instruments that are semi-hollow and in the 5-pound range is pretty common for me. Yours is bigger. It's a 15-inch body, so it's pretty hard to get it all the way down to 5, but it's still quite light. Yeah,
quite light indeed.
So how much does the wood selection there help you, like the redwood, or is it mostly due to curing, or is it because it's aged, or?
Well, I think the weight is a little bit from wood selection. So I use for my bodies and necks Honduran mahogany. which on average is pretty light. It's maybe not the lightest wood, but I'm not choosing maple. I'm not using rosewood necks and things like that, which are all cool, but they kind of go against the let's figure out how to make this light idea. So I guess I give myself some constraints. So the wood choice helps with the weight. I also like the way the wood looks and sounds, so that's nice that these things pair up well. But a lot of it is the design of it is what makes it light. I think that you're probably familiar with a chambered guitar design or a weight relieved guitar design. And you could imagine that it's really kind of a continuum. Like how much chambering have you done? And at what point is your chambered guitar really a semi-hollow guitar?
Right.
And so normally a semi-hollow guitar is a derivative of an arch top. So there's an arched top and a plate and a rim. So it's assembled like an arch top or an acoustic guitar uh, with a block in the middle. But I'm coming at it from a different angle. I'm coming at it from a solid body and removing all the wood. So that in the end, it's like that semi-hollow, but I didn't get there by adding blocks to an arch top. I got there by removing everything from a solid body. So I start out with this big old chunk, one piece chunk of Honduran mahogany for the body, and really most of it disappears. Thinking about it like an acoustic guitar builder, any piece of wood that's not necessary structurally goes away. So it's very light.
Let me just interject real quick because, as Mike explained earlier, Barry, we have all kinds of listeners and people of all kinds of backgrounds. That's the point of our podcast, is to be very inclusive. And so I'll just take a moment to say, why are we focusing on an instrument being light and why does it matter? And I'll just give you the perspective of a performer. I think at least three of us in the room here can attest to the fact that if you have a 2 to 3 hour gig, you don't want this massive weight creating a crick in your neck, causing soreness in your back that night or the next day. And so a light instrument that feels good while you're playing for hours at a time, standing or even sitting for that matter, is a very good thing.
And I think, I guess we all probably know that if you look back to the 70s, there was a moment in time where heavy was the goal. The heavier, the better. And heavy meant sustain. And
Right.
and I think we've since learned that heavy guitars do sustain. That's great, but it's not so directly tied. It's not like if it's not heavy, it can't sustain. There's really more going on, and sustain comes from other things also. So we can make a guitar now that's light and has enough sustain. Now, maybe it's not as much sustain as a 10-pound Les Paul, but maybe do you even need that much sustain, right? Is that everything in balance is more always better. And that moment in time where it was just more sustain, heavier, more sustain, I think is not what we're looking for anymore. Balance is, enough sustain yet light, and just finding something that's a more useful all-around instrument.
Maybe this is a good time, kind of on the heels of you talking about how you basically take that solid body approach to create your instruments. Sprung mass tuning was something I had never heard of until watching your videos, and I wondered if you might tell us a little bit more about that, maybe where it comes from and what that does to the instrument itself.
Yeah, you haven't heard of it because I dreamed it up. It didn't exist until then, as far as I know, right? Probably somebody else thought of it forever ago, and I just don't know it. But as far as I know, it's something I conceived of, trying to figure out again how to make an instrument sound bigger than it is. And we all kind of know that if you take an arch top or an acoustic guitar and you make the body thinner and smaller, that air volume gets decreased. And then the instrument's ability to resonate at the lowest frequencies is diminished. So they tend to sound a little thinner in the low end. Doesn't mean they're bad sounding instruments, but they sound thinner. And the Grand Tour, which is the instrument you have and that uses this technology, is quite thin. It's only a 2-inch body depth, and it's a 15-inch lower bout. So it's a small instrument, and there's no way that air volume inside could ever be made to resonate at the frequency you need it to sound like a big arch top. So I had this crazy idea that I could maybe mechanically get that frequency of resonance. Not just get it from somewhere else. Don't get it from the air volume. Get it from what turns out to be the back resonating. So traditionally in an acoustic guitar or an archtop, you would thin the back, and the thinner you make the wood, the looser it gets. It starts to lose its structural integrity, and then it's able to resonate at a lower frequency. So thinner and thinner, it gets lower and lower. But there's a point where you've gone beyond what works structurally, right? You can only thin it so much. So what I've done is take the idea of a woofer, having been a speaker designer for a long, long time. If you think about how a woofer works in terms of its mechanical resonance, it's basically a spring and a mass. The spring is the suspension, which is the surround around the cone, and the spider on the inside. The surround and the spider perform two main functions, both centering and a spring, basically, to return it to the center. So you have a spring and a mass. The mass is the cone and the voice coil. And you can tune the resonant frequency of a woofer by altering the spring or the mass. So you can add or subtract mass from the cone, make it lighter or heavier. Or you can loosen or stiffen the spring, the suspension, and you can make that woofer have a primary resonance at any frequency you want, really. So I thought I'm going to do that with my back. So I've got this chunk of mass in the middle of a back, and then the back is quite thin all the way around it, right? So much of the back is like the suspension, and in the center, there's a mass that's forcing it to resonate low. If I took that same amount of wood of the mass and spread it out across the back, now the back would be thick and it would be stiff and it wouldn't resonate low at all. So it's that combination of making it thin so it can move, and then adding mass, which forces it to move at a much lower frequency, kind of slows it down. And then I actually can tune it. So I tune the backs to 101 hertz, which is basically halfway between a G and a G sharp. So every back is set to that. And that's roughly where any acoustic instrument would get tuned. You guys probably know this, but most any acoustic instrument, whether it's a violin or a double bass or an acoustic guitar, the primary body resonance is usually within a whole step or two of the lowest note the instrument generates at standard tuning, right? So it's supporting the body resonance is supporting those last couple of notes. And so anyway, I've created a thing that mechanically resonates at that frequency instead of hoping that the air volume in conjunction with the F-holes will resonate at that frequency. And it turned out to work, crazily enough. It could have not worked, but it did. It did. And that was like years of pondering. People have been asking me to make something like this for a long time, and I didn't have an idea that excited me, like a reason to make it other than people kind of want me to make an archtop thing. And when I finally landed on this method of creating a resonance in the back to make this little archtop sound bigger, right? So and you could, I'm sure, perceive this on yours as if you're just playing basic chords and working your way down the neck, right? A, G sharp, G, F sharp, just working your way down, it holds up, right? The low end doesn't just disappear as you're going down the neck there. So it was a, I don't know, it was a success. It was a crazy idea. I think it probably is patentable, but I also don't care. I mean, at some point you have to say, if I'm going to spend $20,000 getting this patented, is that going to allow me to sell more guitars, or is that really just worth the hassle? And big corporations chase patents because it's just like a badge of honor to have all of these brilliant ideas patented. But I think at this point, I think I probably don't care.
It's a super, super cool idea. And I read that, you're carving into a solid piece of wood instead of gluing back and sides together, which was also super impressive to me as well. But I was going to ask, is that the mass, is that also bored out of that single billet, or is it attached?
It's left from the billet, so it's an area I don't machine away.
Okay,
and so then cool. It usually, because every piece of wood varies, they usually don't hit the mark. So sometimes they're resonating a little too low, and I actually have to go in and carve away some wood from that block that's left behind to lighten it up and bring the frequency up. And sometimes I need to drag the frequency down, so I'll bore a hole and put some steel inserts in there. I'll actually bury a little bit of steel in that block to get the mass up just a little bit and get the resonant frequency down to where I want it. There's so many variables when whether you're making a hand carved arch top or an acoustic guitar, whether it's nylon or steel string, so many variables in carving it, and the thickness and the wood varies. So I feel like having at least one thing be solid. Like I know all my backs are resonating at the same frequency. Doesn't mean all the guitars end up sounding the same, because the tops are still all different and there's so many variables. But I like the idea, just from an engineering standpoint, that there's at least one primary part of the acoustic structure of this that's the same every time.
Well,
Repeat.
that might be an interesting segue into this variability of different types of woods. That has been a
Hmm.
big topic of conversation over the past couple of years, tone wood and things like
Yeah.
that. And it seems like you would have a very unique take on that.
Yeah, I think that people like things to be simple, and black and white is simple. Matters or it doesn't matter. It's good or it's bad. And of course, it's more nuanced than wood matters or wood doesn't matter. Um, so obviously, I guess I fall into the wood matters camp, but I think it would be weird to me to say wood didn't matter when you hear people talking about every other thing on the guitar mattering. Right. People will go on and on and on about the saddle material and the bridge. And what's the bridge cast out of? And how long are the studs that you've put into the body? And every single thing matters, but oh, not the wood. Right. How is that possible? You know, so I do think, though, that you could overstate how much the wood matters. And that's probably where people get into a little trouble, um, especially in an electric guitar, right? Like maybe we could all agree that a mahogany backed dreadnought sounds different than a rosewood back and side dreadnought, and we can kind of hear the difference between a cedar topped acoustic guitar and a spruce top. Like I think everyone kind of can agree that they can hear these things. So in the acoustic world, wood matters, and we can all kind of agree on that. So if you put a center block in and make it a semi-hollow instrument now, does the wood all of a sudden stop mattering? I don't. So what if you go all the way to a solid body? Does the wood stop mattering? And so I think really what's happening is the wood's mattering less and less. So if we're talking about a solid body guitar, and there's no way to know, I think, the answer, but maybe the wood matters 10%, 15%, right? Maybe the pickups are 75%, and the bridge and the frets are another 10%. So it's hard to say how much the wood matters, but I believe that it matters, and in a varying degree depending on how hollow and resonant the instrument is.
Mhm.
Um,
Well, you also said you like the way certain woods that you select look, and I can say that let's face it, it matters to the performer. You pick up your instrument, you want to be inspired in all its in all of the ways in which it can
that's right.
inspire you, including how it looks.
It all matters, absolutely. And a lot of times, like if you wanted to make the case that even on a semi-hollow guitar, that if it was a mahogany body and a figured maple top or a figured redwood top, that you could maybe make the case that it's 75% pickups is what you're hearing, and in a bad room full of people, the audience can't tell the difference. And that might be true, but that doesn't mean the artist can't tell the difference, and that the artist isn't enjoying the instrument or more inspired by the instrument. Again, it's just not so black and white. True, maybe the audience can't tell the difference, but that doesn't invalidate the whole idea.
So we kind of, I mean, maybe this is details that we can't get into on a podcast, but the boring out of, like, I'm going to go back to the mechanics and just the physics of making this happen, right?
Okay.
This is new to me. So, but I get having a back and front and a top and sides and all this and gluing them together and shaping them. But the boring out of a single piece, like what mechanism, you know, did you have to design anything to
Yeah, so
actually like have to get in there and do everything you need?
I could show you an example. This is big old chunk, one piece Honduran mahogany,
Hmm.
right? Just big old thing. Little, super lightweight, um,
Oh.
semi-hollow double cutaway Mendocino. So you can see that I've left a rim, just like so. An acoustic guitar would have a very thin side and kerfing, right? And if you look at the thickness of that side plus the kerfing, that's what this is, right? So it's not a completely made up dimension. It's matching what you would have had with
Yeah.
kerfing. Um, a small center block, and all of this material has just been removed from a router, basically. So a router bit comes in and just eats it all away. And I used to do this with a something called a pin router, which is a pretty common tool in the guitar making world. I do it with a CNC router now. But so that's, small body. This is a Mendocino. So this is not what yours looks like, Mike. This is not a Grand Tour, but the Grand Tour is still constructed similarly. It's still a one-piece body, a little bit of a rim left, some mass left in the middle, and it's hollow.
This may be
Okay. So
this may be obvious, but that cross piece is that where the bridge sits
That's where
on
the
top of?
bridge lands,
Yeah.
exactly. One of the reasons these little Mendocinos sound kind of big, they really have the same acoustic signature as like a 335, is the 335 has a, I don't know, 4.25 inch center block. It's quite large. I'm not quite certain of its dimension. So it's a big 16-inch body, but it's also a huge wide center block. So there's really not that much unsupported top available to resonate, even though it's a giant instrument. So here, as the instrument's bout has gotten smaller, the center block has also gotten smaller. So I've maintained a lot of square inches, let's say, of top available to resonate. And of course, it's a solid redwood or spruce top, not a laminated top, which also gives you a little bit back. These are all like little tiny things. In other industries, we might talk about marginal gains. No one thing makes it a good instrument or a bad instrument, but a whole bunch of little tiny things hopefully add up to something.
Hmm.
great. Yeah. Okay. So there is a separate top. And like, forgive me, but I've never played one of your guitars,
Yeah.
and so I was thinking that on some of the models you went so far as to route out the entire thing intact. You know what I mean?
Right. No. So the top is just like an acoustic guitar top.
Okay.
So in this case, it's flat. This is a piece of redwood, very light. Literally just you would normally make a steel string flat top acoustic with this, and
Hmm.
I'm going to take that and put it on here, and now we have a semi-hollow instrument.
Hmm.
That construction technique is not unique to me. That this particular technique that I've shown you, but I like the technique um, because it eliminates a lot of glue joints. So I have basically the top to the body, the neck to the body, and the fretboard to the neck.
Hmm.
That's it, right? If we look at like a 335, let alone the 6 glue joints between the layers of the laminate top and back, there's still the sides to the kerfing to the top, and then there's the center block, and then there's this weird interface thing that the center block glues to that then glues to the top. So if you want to get on forums and listen to all the people going on and on and on about what glue sounds best and what glue should you use, my thought is to design the instrument so there's very little glue. And then I don't care, right? I mean, I'm exaggerating to say I don't care,
Yeah.
but you know what I
Yeah.
mean.
Well, for what it's worth, I had the pleasure of playing Mike's guitar this afternoon. I wanted to make sure. I wanted to make sure because I live just a few minutes away from him, and so I just wanted to make sure I was able to try it before this chat. And to add to this current part of our conversation, I can say that among many of its very positive qualities, it just felt super tight, like super solidly constructed, almost like it was one piece. Like amazing tolerances and just like very, very. And it was weird looking at it from the back to the side because it looked from the back like a solid. I mean, it is solid. You know what I
It's
mean? But
from one. It's a solid chunk of wood. Yeah.
yeah, it was, and you feel that when you play. And that's one of the positive experiences that you get from a fine instrument like that.
I guess I should throw in one negative, just to be fair and balanced about it all, is the one downside to what I'm doing here is there's a lot of waste of wood, right? So if this chunk of mahogany was sliced up into thin little slices to make backs, instead of one body, I might be able to make two guitars or maybe not three, yeah, maybe three guitars. I don't know. So it's a little bit wasteful, unfortunately, but everything has pros and cons. On the upside, it's efficient. It's so the amount of labor it takes to make this body versus the way that would be more efficient with wood, it's far less if that would be far less efficient with labor.
Yeah.
And labor is more expensive than wood. So it allows me to keep the price of the instrument more reasonable. I mean, these are not cheap guitars, but they're not crazy money. And things like this is why, because I can get the labor way down. And so everything's a trade-off. That is kind of the one downside to this approach, though, is I do make a lot of sawdust.
Yeah. I bet it smells amazing, and I bet you have a lot of kindling for your solo stove.
Yes. Yeah. So a lot of mulch, a lot of mahogany mulch for the yard.
There you go.
One of the interesting things I noticed as soon as I took the guitar out of the case and then plugged it in, we're talking about, all the various components that go into the sound of the guitar. And, from playing solid body electrics, if I'm not happy with the sound of it, there's other pickups, and I pop those pickups in. There's a characteristic of sound in those pickups that I think can carry over in my experience from one guitar to the other. Yours has an incredible clarity. Like, I strummed it acoustically, tuned it up, played around on it, went and plugged it in. And amazingly, that same character that I'm hearing out of the acoustic instrument, I'm hearing through the amplifier. And it's a unique experience. And I don't know if what I'm saying, makes sense or there's a reason behind it. It's a wonderful character to hear it come through in such a way. And I don't know if that's something you can speak to or verify in any type of way.
Well, sort of. It's a little. Some of these topics are hard to speak to in an absolute manner, but I generally feel like the liveliness of these instruments acoustically imparts something to the pickups. And maybe if I were to, this goes back to the wood matters of thought, but I think that it's really interesting if you maybe would humor me for a moment to talk about how. Because I think it goes to a little bit of what you're describing about how what you hear acoustically seems to be coming out the pickups. When you strum the guitar, there's a finite amount of energy that you've inputted into this mechanical system, right? And of course, the strings vibrate and the pickup picks up the strings and out goes the sound. But also, through the sheer fact that you're hearing the instrument acoustically, that means that energy has been stolen from the strings and brought through the bridge into the body, and the body is now moving. That's stealing energy from the strings. So now that's less energy at that particular frequency, let's say, for the pickups to pick up. But it's a resonant circuit. It's resonating. So while it's resonating, it's also dosing that frequency back to the strings through the bridge. So it's a time smear, right? So it takes the energy and then it rings and it slowly feeds some of that energy back over time. So you get a very kind of complex signature. It's not like a super heavy neck through where it's super tight and precise. The body is giving and taking energy and smearing the time aspect of it. And I think you can really hear that if you play like your Grand Tour and like a Strat or a Tele through a good clean amp, but with no effects, no reverb, no nothing. And you can actually hear what sounds like a little bit of reverb on the amplified signal on the Grand Tour, let's say, versus a full solid body, even though there's no reverb. And that is just because of this nature of the body resonating and stealing and giving back energy over time.
Well, I said, this is one of the best science classes I've ever sat in, partly because you have a great way of explaining what's happening.
Yeah.
Well, I guess I have the luxury of just sitting and thinking about this stuff a lot.
Well, clearly, we're better off for it. Um, do you have any insights, being a businessman yourself? Uh, is it just you? Are you the operation?
I have help in the shop, but it's a small operation. I have a little team of people who work part-time. Basically, everybody that works here is a musician, and they don't want a full-time job, right? But to have a couple days a week of reliable income, that's a pretty good thing, right? And it's loose. You disappear on tour for 2 3 weeks. Great, somebody else fills in. So it's just kind of a little team of folks that adds up to maybe, I don't know, an employee and a half, maybe plus
Hmm.
me plus an employee and a half. If you add up all the people doing a couple days here and there,
Hmm.
so it's not even. I don't know if it counts as a team, right? It's more than I can build, but that's it. I make about 100 guitars a year.
Wow.
So for a small shop, that's a lot, but in the grand scheme of things, it's nothing really, right? So it kind of is 2 guitars a week, roughly, is kind of where we are. And as efficient as I am in manufacturing and even designing guitars to be efficiently made, one person can't do that. So
Hmm. Hmm.
Well, you mentioned efficiency, but obviously there's the consistency of the product that you're putting out, which is always more impressive as you offer more and more models. As a builder, do you feel like you get to a certain comfort level with the designs you have and you work on maintaining that? Or is there still this level of innovation with every new one that comes out and you learn new things to impart so, you know, it improves over time?
well, I think there's definitely improvement over time, but it's pretty small. Like I'm a big fan of Dr. Deming and the idea of continual improvement and continually reviewing your processes, continually reviewing everything. So I kind of feel like no matter how many of these I've made, I can always make them better. And better might mean faster, but the same quality. It might mean that the bridge fits more snugly. It might mean that it could be anything. Like I'm always looking at everything about the instruments to make them better. Because I feel like all aspects of better are important, right? Sounds better, plays better, looks better, easier to make, costs less in materials. These are all valid, right? Like it's not. Uh, it doesn't make. I don't feel like it makes me less of an artist to care about profit, right? It's all part of the plan.
Hmm.
Need profit to keep going.
Well,
That's for sure.
Need the profit to keep going. Yeah.
absolutely. Um, we're still a fairly new podcast, and we've been fortunate to have various members of the industry speak to us. And one of the things that I have kind of picked up on that I try to ask, especially luthiers, but sometimes amp builders and other craftsmen. From me, the consumer, I'm not very skilled in terms of doing things to my guitars. I've built skills, but I am no means a repairman or anything like that. From your
Sure.
standpoint, is there any kind of wisdom that you can impart to us about the way we go about just maintenance as opposed to maybe a true professional does it? And you can make fun of us as much as you want.
Maintenance. Well, that's a very good question. Let me think about that. I mean, the first thing that pops into my mind is to lubricate your nut. So many.
Not so
I
not
hear
even
so many.
not everybody does that. I would say actually, in my experience, very few people do that.
Right.
Right, like the old school thing is you shave some pencil lead in there, right? The graphite
Right.
lube, or there are all kinds of products that are made that you can buy nut sauce and different things. And I like Burt's Beeswax lip balm.
Oh, wow.
I take a little toothpick and take a little bit of that lip balm and touch it in each little saddle slot. But if I take a brand new guitar that I've just cut the slot in the nut and I'm tuning it, and I just drop the tiniest bit of that waxy lubricant on the nut slots, it's like I just upgraded my tuners. Like the smoothness of tuning the instrument, it's a shock. It's like it goes from mediocre tuners to really nice tuners, and I just lubricated the nut.
My mind is blown.
No, that's great.
Now I know what to do with the remnants of my Burt's Bees when I get down to the end and can't get it all out.
Yeah, get in there with the toothpick and fish it out.
Exactly.
Yeah, I've got a favorite Strat of mine that I can't keep in tune. I've tried everything, but maybe it's that. Maybe it's Burt's Beeswax.
Maybe that's what you need. I think I also use just for my own personal preferences, I use unbleached bone nuts.
Okay.
And unbleached bone nuts have a bit more sort of oiliness to them, so they're a bit more lubricated naturally. Where most people are using bleached bone nuts, and those feel almost sticky. They really, there's some friction in that. That they're not. They also look like somebody who's over whitened their teeth to me. Like we see these like glowing, gleaming, bright white nuts. But what else? I think that less neck relief is good. Like you shouldn't be afraid to adjust your truss rod. And I know there's a preference there, and some people want a little more neck relief, but there's a lot of confusion between neck relief and action, the height of the strings above the fretboard, because they kind of interrelate, right? Should you be raising and lowering your saddle, or should you be changing your relief?
Right.
And I feel like most guitars perform better when they have a little less relief, which lowers the strings, and then you raise the saddle up to put them back where they should be. But you can get that really out of whack. You can get the saddle really low and then a lot of relief. And if you're just measuring at the 12th fret, your string height, you can have the same string height at the 12th fret with a bowed neck and a low bridge, or a flat neck and a high bridge. And one works much better than the other.
That was another sort of stellar attribute of the guitar that I tried earlier today of yours. So I wanted to see if we could speak a little bit about that. I couldn't help but notice that the action was unbelievably consistent at seemingly every string fret intersection on the fretboard. I was amazed. It didn't matter if I was on the first fret, regardless of string, or the 12th or beyond. And it blew me away. Is this more or less what you were just talking about, or are there other things that you can speak to that got you?
Yeah, I think there's two things at play. One of them is that setup, which again is knowing how to do a really good setup isn't assumed, right? You'd be surprised how many people don't know how to do a really good setup. I think that's one of the reasons people are so obsessed with Plek. People just go gaga over, I have my guitar Plecked. It plays amazing. I've never played a guitar that plays this well. And I feel like they're comparing that to a poorly set up guitar.
And could you explain to our listeners what Plek is?
Oh, sure. So a Plek is basically a computer-controlled fret leveling system. So it goes in and like laser scans your fretboard. It very precisely sees all of the curvature and whatever's happening with your fretboard. And you can then go in and tell it how you want your fretboard to be sculpted. And it will go computer controlled and level the frets. And it's very, very precise. And it does a great job. But it's also $100 and something thousand machine. And as you're saying, I, without such a machine, am able to create something that plays quite nice. So not to say that the Plek doesn't do a better job than I can. It probably can. It's just more precise. But there's, what is good enough? What is very good? So I think that a lot of shops don't do a good job of setting up and leveling frets. So you take it to someone with a Plek, and that does do a good job. So you attribute that to Plek's amazing, everything else is terrible. But really, it's just a good fret job and a good setup is amazing, whether it was done by me or a Plek and the assumption that everybody knows how to do a good fret job and a good setup is maybe a dangerous assumption. The other thing that goes to what you were describing, though, is that, and not everybody agrees with this, and this is fine. This is all my opinion. Um, but I do carbon fiber reinforce the necks. So, you've got your Honduran mahogany neck, and then down the middle is the truss rod, of course, like you would be familiar. And then more or less flanking on each side is a strip of carbon fiber.
Oh,
Um, and the carbon fiber is, so it's bonded to the wood and it's under the fretboard and it stiffens the neck.
okay.
So when you're playing, you're familiar with the term wolf note, I'm sure, right? When you're
Mhm.
playing the guitar, some notes will ring out louder, some notes die off faster. And a lot of that, not all of it, but a lot of that has to do with the inherent resonance of the neck interacting with the fretted note that you're playing, right? So if the neck resonates at a G sharp and you play a G sharp, something weird's going to happen.
Mhm.
But that won't happen when you go to an A because the neck's not resonating at an A, maybe. So
Right.
it adds this level of unpredictability. So by making the neck stiffer, we don't, it's not that the neck no longer resonates, but I feel that the amplitude of the resonance is reduced, which means its interaction with the fretted note is reduced, and it makes all the notes ring a little more evenly all around the neck.
So the strip of carbon fiber is for reinforcement, but also to reduce wolf tones.
Yes. So it's making the neck more rigid, and the byproduct, a byproduct of that is taming wolf notes.
That's pretty cool.
Um,
That's
yeah. And
cool.
the other thing it does is it makes the truss rod not have to work very hard.
Right.
Because the neck is pretty stout all on its own. So the truss rod is engaged, but it's not doing much. Yeah, it's not a floppy neck where you're having to crank and crank and crank on that truss rod to get the thing straight. And of course, lots of people put carbon fiber in. I'm not unique in that way. And lots of people think that that's a dumb idea and nothing sounds as good as wood. And you're removing wood to put the carbon fiber in. So you must be making it worse. And those people who think that way probably also make really good guitars. So yeah, it's all of this is not so simple as good and bad, right?
I wonder if you might, you know, before we get too far away from maintenance and other ideas, just maybe addressing the ideas of humidity and temperature and its impact on across the gamut. Be it acoustic guitars or semi hollows or solid bodies. Any tips that you might
Mhm.
have in regards to that to keeping them in optimal performing condition?
Yeah, I that's a good question, and I'm fortunate to live in California where we can just leave them out all the time and it's okay. Our temperature and humidity fluctuation throughout the year isn't that great. But of course, in other parts of the country, that's not the case. I guess I don't have anything brilliant to say on the topic, to be truthful. I mean, obviously, you need to be mindful, and if you're in an area of the country that's very cold in the winter, and the heat is cranked, and it's very dry, and your action is changing dramatically. I mean, hopefully, it's not so much that your top is starting to crack, which happens, right? One of the reasons that acoustic guitars have arched tops, not flat tops anymore, even though we call them flat top steel strings, a lot of them have a little bit of an arch to it. So that if the top shrinks or swells, it move like a bellows, right? If it gets dry, it'll flatten a little. If it gets moist and expands, it just bows up a little. And of course, that's messing with your action, but it's not breaking anything.
Yeah.
Where if
Huh.
it was an actual flat top and it got drier, it's got nowhere to go and it splits.
Well, the only other thing that I might add to that, I don't know if this is a wives' tale, but
Yeah.
someone had imparted, one time if you feel like your guitar, the frets are very even with the edge of the neck, and then during the winter it feels like they're protruding a little bit more, that it's an indication that maybe the wood is a little bit too dry, and it's
Yeah.
is that something that is an indication like, oh, I'm feeling that I probably need to, put it in my Huma case or something like that?
Yeah, I would say two things. That would be what I think is commonly known as fret sprout. So like your frets are growing out of the fretboard and then they get sharp and want to cut you. So that is an indication that the instrument is getting dry. It could be that it was made in a slightly more humid environment and it now lives in a slightly drier environment. So it could just happen and stay there, or it could be happening seasonally where the fretboard is growing and shrinking a little. I would think that if you get fret sprout, right, if you're through a dry season and the frets get sharp, first you should take it to a tech. And it's the slightest bit they're sticking out, but of course it's sharp and you can feel it very easily. So it's very easy for a tech to shave or sand and smooth that out. And once they've done it once, it should never happen again. I mean, yes, the fretboard may still move, but it's not going to move more the next time, right? So you can kind of solve that problem. And, I don't usually have a problem with fret sprout because I'm not making guitars that fast. That's kind of a problem that happens in a factory in a moist environment where, you're building 5,000 guitars a day, and they're built and they're assembled and they're in a box and then they're in a container and then they finally end up in a guitar store in Arizona.
Yeah.
And then they finally dry out and all the frets are sharp, right? Where here things are moving a little slower. So hopefully we can catch the fret sprout before it leaves the door. Although on occasion it happens, like, it's embarrassing, but things happen. But yeah, right. It's not only a sign that things are a little dry, but it's also something that you shouldn't live with. You should get cleaned up and then not have to struggle with it every year when it goes through that dry cycle.
Great. Thank you. That's, sage information I'm getting here. Well, gentlemen, this has been another extraordinary talk. Barry, we're just so thrilled that you could share your time with us today. Do you have any closing thoughts or anything that you might want to leave our listeners with? Or gentlemen, if you have something else you feel like you want to throw in, I
hope I didn't go on and on too much.
No, not at all.
Get me going on these topics, and I'll just keep talking.
I do have one question.
Yeah.
That I forgot to ask earlier. And I haven't seen that you do, but do you have any plans, if you don't, to make your own pickups?
At the moment, no.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to rule it out completely, but I actually like, there's two things. One is I like the idea of someone mastering their craft. So somebody who makes pickups all day long is going to be better at making a pickup than I am, because I would make 100 sets a year. They might make 100 sets a month. Mm-hmm. So I do believe, now there's a marketing benefit to making your own pickups. Customers go gaga over that. I voiced the pickup just for the guitar, and you made a pickup and you put it in the guitar. Yes. And I like the variety of pickups available in the world, so that I can find the pickup that I think complements the instrument best, or that lends itself to what the customer is trying to achieve with the instrument.
Right.
So having all of those pickups in the world to choose from expert builders, I think is a really interesting, gives me some interesting variety, where if I made my own pickups, I might make a couple of models, and geez, all my guitars would have those models. And then I'd have to make up some marketing reason why that's better, right?
Well, that is an interesting topic in and of itself there. I'm sure you get, obviously a lot of custom requests. I know that you do send some to various stores and things of that nature. But I kind of at this level with custom requests, I imagine a lot of customers may have something in mind already when they approach you in terms of a sound that they want. I know I did that. I had a certain set of pickups that I loved on a guitar that I sold so I could buy this guitar, and they worked out wonderfully well on this instrument. But is that something that's pretty typical, or do you have clientele that, ask for your opinion on certain things as well?
Yeah, I feel like most of the instruments I build are customized at some level, whether it's a slightly wider nut because they're an acoustic guitar player and that just feels more comfortable, or it's P90s because they love the idea of a Grez, but they only play P90s. So great, we'll make one with P90s, no problem. So there's some level of customization almost always. I build a standard model in theory, but I rarely have enough time to just build a standard model, put it in stock, and try to sell it. So everything I build is pre-sold. Fortunate enough to have like a, you know, geez, at the moment I think about a 30 instrument backlog that we go through pretty quickly. But so every one of those, I've spoke with somebody about it, whether it's just the color or the shape of the neck or the pickups, or some people are very particular about the frets, right? They know exactly the model number of the frets they want on their instruments. And to me, that's no big deal. So we put the frets in you want, right? There's no extra cost really. I'm just pounding in the frets you want instead of the frets I stock. They cost me a couple extra bucks to buy one set versus the frets I buy by the spool. So there's a lot of customization, but I try to limit the customization to a few items because it can get out of hand pretty quickly. So I feel like it's kind of like choose three things: pickups, color, and add a Bigsby, or nut width, custom binding, and some fancy neck inlays. Or so with that sort of thing, you can pick 2, 3, 4 things and really make the instrument your own, both visually and how it plays and sounds, without going too crazy. I kind of jokingly but seriously tell people, don't send me a spreadsheet, right? Because people will, they'll just 400 little line items. It's this exact screw and this. But to the pickup question, I guess maybe it wasn't a question, but you were talking about your pickups that you knew you liked. It's very rare that a customer comes to me with bad ideas, but it does happen, right? So, a guitar that sounds good with P90s will also sound good with other pickups. And, there's a few instances where I think there are kind of magic combinations that just work super well. But generally speaking, you can, if you have a favorite pickup, it can go in a guitar and it's going to work. Once in a while, I have to stop people from doing things that I either know don't work from experience or I'm nervous about working, right? Because we don't want to make an expensive experiment. But usually folks who are coming to me have a pretty good idea of what they want.
Well, I think this kind of comes full circle that I mentioned earlier in the podcast. Working with you was a very enjoyable experience to make sure you knew I would be getting the instrument I wanted.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
And thank you, Barry. This has been fantastic, and I really look forward to following your Instagram and seeing what else you keep putting out there for us.
I just appreciate the invite, and thanks, guys.
Just wanted to remind everyone to check out Grez Guitars, Grez Guitars.com. I recommend starting on the gallery link and then moving on to models and about and learning all about this whole world. And I second everything that Mike has said. And with the very little experience that I had trying your guitar today, I was blown away. So very well done.
Thank you. I'm very, very lucky to get to spend my days making guitars. So, yeah.
Nice. Well, thank you, Barry. It's been a pleasure talking with you.
Thanks, guys.
All right, that was our excellent interview with Barry Grzebik of Grez Guitars. It was fantastic to learn about his instruments and his philosophies on guitar making and more, and we're really grateful for his time this episode. Would like to encourage you to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, as well as stream us on Spotify and other podcast platforms. Please feel free to reach out to us at our email address, which is pluckthatguitarpodcast@gmail.com. You can always also leave a comment on our YouTube videos. For example, you can always leave a question for an upcoming guest that you may know about. And we look forward to seeing you at the next one.